Good day. How we doing? I hope you all are doing great out there today. Today we'll be looking at solving quadratic equations by either using factoring or the square root method. Okay, so first things first, a quadratic function is one that can be written in one of two forms. We have quadratic equation, one where you have your ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And the other one is a times x minus h squared plus k equals 0. An equation of quadratic form can be written in one of these two forms. The first form is called the general form, and the second is called the standard form. Now, the standard form equations are actually pretty straightforward to solve. But the general form, there are several techniques for solving them because they tend to be more difficult. Let's look at a few of them, shall we? Ways of solving the general form equation. So let's go right here let's solve this equation right here, x squared. So solve. Remember in our previous discussion, when we're saying solve, we're looking for the zeros or we're looking for the x-intercepts. If it is a function, solve x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0 by factoring. Factoring is the process of taking the function and rewriting it such that it is two linear factors that are being multiplied together and then using the zero product property to get to our answer. There are about maybe 17 different ways of factoring. I am not going to go through all 17. What I'm going to do instead is just show you my favorite way of factoring, which is the cross method. And then you can choose whichever method that you prefer. That's fine by me. So I'll go through this in detail. I'll do two examples so we can see how this works out. This method is what's called a trial and error method. And so what it means is we're going to keep trying until we get to our answer. The factored form of an equation is unique, and so there's only one way of factoring it. And so once we get an answer, that's automatically the correct answer. So what I do right here is I write out my equation. And what I have to do is break it down and break down the outside terms into their factors. So I have x squared right here. I need two terms that multiply to give me x squared. Well, that happens to be, if I take each one of an x, there happens to be only one way. X times x gives me x squared, right? And that's the only way I can create x squared. On the other hand, the other term, the second outside term right here, the negative 6, that's a little harder. Because negative 6, I can have 1 times 6. I could have 6 times 1. I could have 2 times 3. And I can have 3 times 2. All of these are possible ways of getting to negative 6. Obviously, you have to include a negative sign somewhere along the way to make it negative. And so we're going to try out all 4 of these with the appropriate minus signs, see if we can get the answer. So let's start right here with negative 1 and 6. Again, negative 1 times 6 gives me negative 6, the outside term. And x times x gives me x squared, which is again the outside term. And all I do is I simply cross. So I go x times 6 is 6x, and I go x times negative 1 is negative 1x, and then I add the two results together. I add them together and I get 5x. And I have to ask myself, is 5x the middle term? And the answer is no. And so my trial has failed, and so I need to try again. So I got to go back to the drawing board. Back. So now what I'm going to do is, instead of using the negative 1 here, instead of using the negative 1 and 6, I'm going to use the 2 and 3. And so I will have negative negative 2 and positive 3. Again, negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. We didn't change the outside, so that's fine. And then again, I cross. So I go x times 3 is 3x. And I go x times negative 2 is negative 2x. And then I add. When I add these together, I get 1x. And I noticed very quickly, I almost got the right answer. I have a 1x instead of a negative x. And what that tells me to do is I just need to move the sign. So I just need to take the minus sign here and put the minus sign down here. And then my crossing will work. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. X times 2 is 2x. I add them together, and that gives me negative x, which is the middle term, yay. I think that's how you spell yay, I don't know. And now that I have done all of this hard work right here, now that we have the correct factors right here, the correct multiples, the correct term right here is simply these two right here are your correct term. And so my original problem was x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0. I now can rewrite it with the factors I have. X plus 2 times x minus 3 is equal to 0. And then I use the ZPP, zero product property. The zero product property says that if I multiply two terms and the answer is 0, at least one of them must be 0. And so what that tells me is that either x plus 2 must equal 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. Once one of these is 0, the whole equation will be 0. And so therefore I can solve. Minus 2, so x equals negative 2 plus 3 plus 3, and so x is equals to 3. And those are two answers to our equations. If we plug these in, I'll get an answer of 0, so those are my two zeros. Those are also my x-intercepts. My x-intercepts will be negative 2, 0, and 3, 0. Those are also my x-intercepts as well. Let's try an example where numbers are a little bit larger than life, and so it might take us a little bit longer to get to our answer, but we can get there because we got faith. So another example. So let's say I have 4x squared minus 2x minus 12, and I'm trying to get this thing right here equal 0. And then I'm trying to factor this thing to solve. So I'm trying to solve by factoring. Right, and so first things first, I have the number 4 right here. And the numbers that multiply to give me 4 are 4 times 1 and 2 times 2. On the other hand, I have the daunting 12 on the other side. And numbers that multiply to give you 12 are 1 and 12, and then 2 and 6, and 3 and 4, and 4. Yeah, and so that's all of them, I think. Yep. And so what we have to do right here is we trial and error. So you start with the 4 and 1, and so that would mean that this right here would become 4x and 1x, because 4 times 1 gives you 4x times x gives you 4x squared. And on the outside right here you will have 1 and 12, and you need to make one of them negative right here. And then what we do right here is we will cross, and so 4 times 12 is 48x, and then x times 1 is negative 1x, and when we add those together we get 47x. Clearly that's not the right answer, And so we will try again. So instead of using the 1 and 12, we will use the 2 and 6. And so we will use 2 and 6. 4 times 6 is 24x. X times 2 is negative 2x. And we add them together. And that gives you 22x. Again, that doesn't work. So what we have to do is switch the, what we have to do is we have to switch the 2 and the 6. And so put the 2 here and put the 6 here, and then try again. Four times 2 is 8. 8x, and that is, yeah, and then x times 6 is x times 6 is negative 6x. You add those together and you get 2x. And that's almost right, except that our sign is off. And so what we will have to do is we will have to go ahead and we will have to switch the signs. So I'm going to put the negative down here and try again. 4 times 2 is negative 8x. X times 2 is 6x. And we add those together, we get our negative 2x. And so these right here are our two factors. And so therefore your 4x squared minus 2x minus 12 equals 0 is going to be 4x plus 6 multiplied by x minus 2 is equal to 0. And then you solve for x. Set each of them equal to 0 by use of the zero product property. So you're going to subtract 6. So 4x equals negative 6 and divide by 4. And so we get then that x is equal to reducing negative 3 over 2. And on the other side right here, add 2. And so we get x equals 2. And those right here are our two x's. All right. This method works for any and all factors. It can take some time. It is, after all, a trial and error. It's good to keep track of the different types that you're trying to keep you on the straight and narrow. All right. Other than factoring, the other method is solving an equation in standard form by use of the square root method. So let's say I have right here this example. 2 times x minus 1 squared minus 4 is equals to 0. This is an equation right here in standard form. When you have an equation in standard form, you have exactly 1x. And when you have exactly 1x, you can directly solve for x. And very simply, whenever you're doing direct solving, what you do is you take the PEMDAS methodology and you work it backwards. PEMDAS says you do parentheses, then exponents, then multiplication, division, then addition, subtraction. To solve an equation directly, you should do all of those but in reverse. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take care of the addition, subtraction. We're going to undo this first. And then after we undo this, we're going to then take care of the multiplication / division. So that's the second step. Then we have going to take care of our exponents. And then last but not least, we're going to take care of our parentheses. So we're going to work all 4 of those right here, PEMDAS backwards, and we're going to undo each of those actions. And in doing so, we would simplify and solve for x. So first things first, we will go ahead and we'll add 4 to both sides, thereby eliminating the 4. And so that will leave us with 2x minus 1 squared is equals to 4. Then we will divide by 2. And that will leave us with x minus 1 squared is equals to 2. Then we'll get rid of the square. You get rid of the square by taking the square root on both sides. So you will radical here, radical there, radical everywhere. And of course, the radical will cancel with the 2. And so that will leave me with x minus 1 is equal to, and since we're looking for the complete solution, we take all the answers, we have to take both the positive and the negative root of 2. And then what that leaves us with are two separate equations that we need to solve. So first we would have that x minus 1 equals root 2. And then we would have x minus 1 is equal to negative root 2. In either case, we just need to add 1 to both sides. So x is equals to 1 plus root 2. And add 1. And so x is equals to 1 minus root 2. And those right there are our two solutions. For most quadratic equations, you do get two answers. Every once in a while you get one answer, and every once in a while you get no answers. Consider, for example, this equation right here. I have 3x minus 4 squared plus 27 is equals to 0. I will start by subtracting the 27 from both sides. And that will leave me with 3 times x minus 4 is equals to negative 27 squared. Divide by 3, divide by 3. These cancel. Leaves me with x minus 4 squared is equals to negative 9. Take the square root. I take the square root. And I get x minus 4 is equals to, but there is no real solution. And so therefore this equation has no real answer. And so therefore that's all we say, because we cannot take the square root of a negative number. The answer is imaginary, but for now there is no answer. If I take the same equation but I make a small change to it, i.e. I make it negative 3 times x minus 4 squared plus 27 equals 0. It looks basically the same, but that small change actually leads us to an equation that can be solved. So if I subtract 27 like I did before, I get negative 3 times x minus 4 squared is equals to negative 27. But now, when I divide by negative 3, I get that x minus 4 squared is equals to positive 9. Now that I have the positive 9, I can go ahead and I can take the square root and not worry about that minus sign. Square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. And so that leaves us with two equations. X minus 4 equals 3, or x minus 4 equals negative 3. And of course I add 4. And so I get that x is 7 or x is 1. And those are my two solutions to my equations. Thank you.